What's going on, everybody? I want to welcome you to M2H Academy, where we will be focusing on helping men build stronger minds, healthier relationships, better lives. I will be your host instructor. Welcome to my channel, Royalty. And today we're going to start with a question that really affects millions of men. And that question is, why don't men talk about their feelings? And it's not because men don't have emotions. That's not the case. Obviously, we are, human beings, alive and breathing. We do have emotions. It's not because, we're cold. And if we are cold, that's something that has become a development over time. It's not because we don't care. And once again, if are, displaying actions of carelessness, it's something that has been developed over time through the course of experience and actions. But the truth is, a lot of men do not speak about their feelings because we were never really taught how, and I could be speaking for most, I could be speaking for some, but I just want to come forward as a voice for men, and creating that support and creating that space and environment, and just talk about things. So if you ever heard a phrase like man up, or a phrase like stop crying, or be strong, handle it yourself, then this is the perfect conversation for you, because that's just a series of things that really contribute to, in the long run, men not being very vocal when it comes down to expressing emotions and feelings, due to being shut down, as a toddler, as an adolescent, even in adulthood. So this conversation will be for you. Be sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below at any portion during the episode if you agree with something, disagree with something, want to chime in on something. I am very attentive and engaged with my listeners and my viewers. But we can go ahead and get started.
It's time for tea time.
So what happens, most boys are not born emotionally closed off. Just take time to just watch a toddler, as I have a toddler. So, just taking time to watch a toddler, I watch him as he cries, when he gets hurt. I watch him as he laughs, when he's happy. He runs to somebody when he's scared. But then something changes, because I also have a 13-year-old boy, and I've watched him grow over time. And as boys grow older, society starts to reward emotional suppression in our young men. So what once seems to be okay, and you develop that sense of okayness for it, it then tends to fade over time, due to societal's suppression of emotions. So society starts to celebrate toughness, even within households, environmentally, toughness begins to get celebrated, and there's more praise for independence. We started to confuse silence with strength, bottling it, you're more bold when it's bottled in, but over time, many boys begin to learn one lesson, or we hope that over time, our adolescent boys, our children, our young men, they start to learn a lesson. And that lesson is, if I show emotion, then I'll be judged. If your emotions are started to be used against you as a weakness. So instead of expressing sadness, they started to hide it. We start to hide it. Instead of saying that we're scared, we pretend to be fine, which then promotes putting us in situations that we never really wanted to be in the first place. Instead of asking for help, we learn through experience, by going forward and doing things because we didn't seek out specific guidance. And then that's when we started to carry everything alone. You know what I mean? If you relate to this, or you have a young kid and you kind of know what I'm talking about, you have an adolescent boy, teenage boy, and you know what I'm talking about, go ahead and like and subscribe right now. But they started to carry everything alone. They become really silent. And there's a cost to staying silent. You know, there's a cost to keeping emotions inside. You know, keeping those emotions inside, it doesn't make those emotions disappear. It just changes how they show up. And sometimes that sadness becomes anger. And that's where, you know, we have to be more vigilant and observant, you know, in our young men to help them navigate and guide them through these things, because that's where their confusion is too. They don't know where their anger is coming from because they don't have that understanding that their anger is stemming from some form of sadness. You know, stress eventually becomes, you know, drinking, you know, or in other cases, further substance use. Loneliness starts to become isolation. So now no one's able to keep an eye on you. There is no room for observation. You know, pain becomes workaholism. You know, now you want to numb it out. You want to stay so busy. You want to stay distracted. You are putting your body through, you know, a series of events. You know, burnout starts to come into play, but it's just you running from, you know, a specific pain. And some men become just emotionally unavailable. Like you see them shut down. You see that silence set in. You see them, you know, you see all the things that I just mentioned happening. But because they're emotionally unavailable, they're not seeing it for themselves. They're not picking up cues from those that are around them. They're no good to their environment. They're no help to the people around them. The empathy is gone. They're just numb. We become numb. You know, others explode. Where that rage and anger kicks in, and others explode over little things because years of hurt have nowhere else to go. And eventually, you know, it's the same, you know, teachings of the Coke bottle, but it's just truth. You know what I mean? And sometimes truth is just what it is, and the only thing you can do is flip it to so many parables, but it just is what it is, and that's what it is. Over time, all that anger explodes, and it has nowhere else to go, and it can become uncontrollable to where you don't even know where you're directing that anger. You don't even know where it's headed. So something to be very aware of. You know, I mean, silence can really damage relationships. That's where communication becomes key. It can really start to affect physical health, and it can lead to mental health conditions of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and just feeling disconnected from life altogether. But what we have to understand is that strong men don't avoid emotions. Strong men learn how to manage emotions. And that's the key. You know, I mean, when you're wondering why most men don't speak on it, and it's just from early years of just shut down. You know what I mean? But that's where confusion happens, and this is where we have to step in and help our boys navigate through this. You know, as men, we have to learn how to navigate through it. We have to learn how to manage our emotions and not bottle them. Stop expecting for them to just disappear. And we have to work through it. We have to understand what we are really feeling. Because behind a lot of anger is hurt. And most of us aren't vulnerable enough to talk about that hurt. But it's there. Behind a lot of silence is fear. And we want to be so prideful and tough that we don't want to talk about our fears. You know, we have a lot of fears. And one, you know, that I can openly speak on for myself, is just the fear of being rejected. And I know that is something that a lot of men fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of looking weak, fear that nobody will understand. But many men are carrying a lot of pressure every day, just from simple tasks of providing for family or trying to succeed, being a father, being a husband, just trying to figure it all out. And what many are doing is silently asking themselves, am I enough? Silently questioning your own worth. Silently just trying to figure out if you're bringing value to those around you and those, and just in anything you're touching in your life. That's a question that most men ask rather than realize, am I enough? And there are a lot of masks that men put on where they may portray themselves as feeling or thinking that they are, but in silence, that's the big question. Am I enough? And us as men, we have to change that culture. So what do we do? Because there's a lot of people that bring awareness to it, but we want to figure out, how do we implement the change? Each one reach one. So what do we do? And first, we have to learn to normalize the conversation. Instead of asking another man, hey bro, you good? We should learn how to ask, how you really doing? How are things really going in your life? Second, we have to together learn emotional vocabulary. Because sometimes we're not just angry. We're disappointed. We're sad. We're discouraged. A lot of these I've learned from going through an emotional wheel, and actually breaking down categories within categories within categories. Sometimes we're not just angry. We're going through a series of emotions that's looking like anger. But what's the root? Embarrassed, disappointed, overwhelmed, lonely. We learn that naming emotions gives us power over them. You cannot have power over anything that you don't name. So once we name the emotion that we're feeling, now we can gain control. Now we can take power over it, and we can implement the change. We have to find spaces. Spaces can look like therapy. Spaces can look like support groups. Spaces can look like contacting a trusted friend, a family member, a mentor. In some cases, that space can just be you taking that time to journal. All of this may seem very difficult at first, but you got to learn to crawl before you learn to walk, before you learn to run. And yes, it's new, but growth starts with honesty. It starts when you begin to be honest with yourself about what you're going through, how you're feeling. And that's what we want to do here at M2H Academy. We don't just want to talk about the problem. We want to become aware of the problem, and we want to increase the awareness and help implement change. So if nobody's ever told you this, I will. You don't lose your masculinity by expressing emotion. And you're taking that from someone who's very expressive about their emotions. You don't lose your masculinity by expressing emotion. You gain emotional intelligence. You gain healthier relationships. You gain peace. Being vulnerable is not a weakness. It's courage. And at M2H Academy, we're redefining what strength looks like. Strong men don't carry everything alone. Strong men heal. Strong men grow. Strong men help other men grow. It takes a lot to be that person to reach out to another person and say, I'm here for you. Just as much as we're looking for the person to reach out and say, I need somebody to be here for me. Strong men grow, but strong men help other men grow. If this podcast, if this video helped you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, share this video with a man, share somebody around you who needs to hear it. You know, and I want you to answer this question in the comments. I want you to answer, what's one thing men should feel more comfortable talking about? And when we come back around for episode 2, for lesson number 2, we'll talk about other big battles that men face. But until then, remember to protect your peace. Remember to prioritize your health. And remember, a better man creates a better family, which creates a better community, and ultimately, a better world.
It's time for tea time.
Positive energy always creates elevation. Peace.